My name is Allison, I'm 26 years old, and until last Easter, I was a successful electrical engineer still living in my parents' home. I'd volunteered to help prepare for our family gathering that weekend, excited to contribute despite always feeling like the black sheep. What I didn't expect was ending up in our garden shed, while my room went to relatives. That cold night changed everything. Before I tell you how I went from sleeping in a garden shed to shutting down my family's power grid, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe to join me on this journey of standing up for yourself when family crosses the line. Growing up as the middle child between two golden siblings was like existing in a perpetual shadow. My parents, Martha and Frank Thompson, never tried to hide their favoritism toward my older sister Grace and younger brother Kyle. While they claimed to love us all equally, their actions told a different story, one where I was always the afterthought. I was 7 when I first recognized the pattern. It was Grace's 13th birthday, and my parents threw her an elaborate party with a professional cake, decorations, and even hired a local band since Grace was musically gifted. 3 months later on my 8th birthday, Mom handed me a grocery store cake and Dad gave me a $20 bill, telling me to get something nice, while they attended Kyle's soccer game. They forgot to sing happy birthday until the next morning. Our childhood bedrooms told the complete story. Grace's room was painted her favorite shade of lavender with matching curtains and a custom desk for her academic future. Kyle's room featured sports memorabilia, gaming systems, and furniture that could grow with him. My room was a converted storage space with mismatched furniture and walls that remained the previous owner's choice of faded yellow. When I asked about repainting, Dad said we needed to prioritize spending. The hand-me-downs became a symbol of my place in the family. I wore Grace's old clothes even though we had different body types, making me feel awkward and uncomfortable at school. Meanwhile, Kyle never wore second-hand anything because boys are rougher on clothes and needed quality items. Grace outgrew a perfectly good bicycle, but instead of passing it to me, my parents sold it and bought Kyle a new one while telling me to keep using my rusty, too small bike another year. Academic achievements widened the divide even further. When Grace brought home B grades, my parents took her out for celebration dinners. When I brought home straight A's and won the regional mathematics competition in 8th grade, Mom taped my certificate to the refrigerator for a week before it disappeared into a drawer. The same year, Kyle's single B- in physical education warranted a new video game system because he tried so hard. The chore distribution in our house never approached anything resembling equality. By age 12, I was responsible for washing dishes, doing my own laundry, and cleaning the bathrooms. Grace needed to focus on college applications, and Kyle was just a little boy who needed time to play. Even after Grace left for college and I entered high school, the imbalance continued. I cooked dinner 3 nights a week while Kyle, then a teenager, couldn't be bothered to put his dishes in the dishwasher. My interest in electronics emerged partly from necessity. 14. I fixed our malfunctioning microwave after watching online tutorials because Dad said we couldn't afford repairs or replacement. I discovered I had a talent for understanding electrical systems, spending hours at the library reading technical manuals and borrowing books on electrical engineering. The first circuit board I built from scraps fascinated me but confused my family. Mom called it another one of Allison's weird hobbies, while Dad asked if I could do something normal instead, like baking. When I won the state science fair with a solar-powered water filtration system in 11th grade, neither parent attended the ceremony despite the event being held just 20 minutes from our home. Grace has a choir concert the same weekend, Mom explained without apology. College should have been my escape, but financial reality hit hard. I earned a prestigious engineering scholarship that covered tuition but not living expenses. My parents contributed nothing, explaining that they were saving for Kyle's future education, despite having fully funded Grace's degree. I worked 2 part-time jobs alongside my rigorous engineering courses, often sleeping just 4 hours a night to maintain my GPA requirements. After graduation, with substantial student loans and a competitive job market, I made what I now recognize as a crucial mistake. I moved back home. It's just temporary, I assured myself, calculating 18 months to save enough for a comfortable deposit on my own place. I secured a position at the local power company, starting as a junior engineer but quickly gaining respect for my technical abilities and work ethic. Unlike Kyle, who at 23 still lived at home without contributing a dollar, I paid $800 monthly in rent to my parents. I also covered utilities, bought groceries, and performed most household maintenance, using my engineering skills to repair everything from the dishwasher to the garage door opener. My parents' acknowledgement? At least you're making yourself useful while you're figuring things out. The contrast between my work life and home life couldn't have been more stark. At work, senior engineers sought my input on complex projects. My supervisor fast-tracked me for a management position, calling me one of the most promising talents we've hired in years. At home, Mom still checked my laundry to see if I did it correctly, and Dad interrupted me constantly when I spoke at dinner. Grace visited monthly with her picture-perfect husband and 2 children. These visits transformed our parents into different people, baking cookies, buying presents, and rearranging their schedules to accommodate Grace's family. Meanwhile, I was often asked to work around the house during these visits, serving food or cleaning up while everyone else enjoyed family time. Kyle's unemployment never concerned my parents. His room remained untouched from his high school days, complete with participation trophies and posters. "He's finding himself," Mom would explain to relatives while my father nodded proudly, as if Kyle's directionless existence represented some form of courage rather than privileged stagnation. 18 months stretched into 2 years as unexpected expenses derailed my savings plan. A medical procedure not covered by insurance, replacing my car's transmission, and helping a close friend through a financial emergency pushed back my timeline. Through it all, I remained the family afterthought, present but never truly seen, contributing but never truly valued. When Easter approached that fateful year, moving from room to room with cleaning supplies while Mom directed from the kitchen where she planned the menu. The living room carpets needed deep cleaning, the guest bathroom required scrubbing, and years of accumulated dust lurked on every surface of the rarely used dining room. "Make sure you get the baseboards in the hallway," Mom called out as I vacuumed the living room. "Your Aunt Patricia always notices those things." By mid-afternoon, my back ached from bending and scrubbing, but the main floor gleamed. Kyle wandered downstairs around 2 o'clock. Mom immediately abandoned her recipe sorting to check the refrigerator. "I can make you a sandwich." "That would be awesome," Kyle replied. Kyle mumbled something non-committal through a mouthful of sandwich. "Kyle helped too," Mom added, patting his shoulder. "He took out the trash earlier." The single kitchen trash bag apparently equaled my 8 hours of intensive housework. I bit my tongue and continued mopping. Day 2 involved shopping. Mom, Kyle, and I drove to 4 different stores for specific ingredients and decorations. I pushed the cart and carried the heaviest bags while Mom consulted her lists, and Kyle disappeared regularly to check something out quick in the electronics section. When we returned home, Dad greeted us in the driveway. "There's my shopping crew. Kyle, come help me unload these bags, son." Kyle carried exactly 2 bags inside, both containing potato chips, before declaring himself wiped out and retreating to his room. I unloaded the remaining 14 bags alone while Mom praised Kyle's helpfulness to Dad. The cooking marathon began on day 3. The house looked beautiful, the refrigerator bulged with prepared dishes, and I'd managed to fix the flickering light in the guest bathroom using my electrical expertise. Maybe this holiday would be different. Maybe they would finally see me. Friday morning brought the first wave of relatives. Aunt Patricia and Uncle Robert arrived from Connecticut with their teenage twins. Mom greeted them with theatrical embraces while Dad carried their luggage inside. I stood back, waiting to be acknowledged, until Aunt Patricia finally turned to me. "Allison, still living at home. I see. Haven't found your path yet." "Actually, I'm an electrical engineer at the power company. I've been there almost 2 years now," I explained for what felt like the 100th time. "How nice," she replied with the distracted tone people use when they're not really listening. "Is that some sort of technician position?" Before I could correct her misunderstanding, Mom steered them toward the living room. "Allison is still figuring things out. Kyle is here too. He's exploring entrepreneurial opportunities." Kyle's entrepreneurial opportunities consisted of occasionally selling items from his collection of vintage action figures online, but the family nodded appreciatively at his apparent ambition. Grandma and Grandpa have the downstairs guest room. Patricia and Robert, you'll be in Allison's room since it has the attached bathroom. I froze, appetizer tray still in hand. We thought you could take the couch in the den. It pulls out. The den couch was actually a 20-year-old love seat that didn't pull out at all. At 5'7", I would be sleeping in a fetal position with the armrest as my pillow. That doesn't even make sense, I said. Why not put them in Kyle's room? It's bigger than mine and has its own bathroom too. The family fell silent. Dad cleared his throat awkwardly. Kyle needs his space, he said firmly. He's got his computer set up for his business in there. My business is literally electrical engineering, and all my work materials are in my room, I countered, feeling heat rise in my cheeks. Mom's smile tightened. Allison, please don't make a scene. It's just for the weekend. What about the pullout in the living room? That's at least an actual bed, I suggested. That's where the cousins are sleeping, Mom replied, gesturing to my teenage nieces and nephews. I looked around the room, meeting various family members' uncomfortable gazes. No one spoke up. Aunt Patricia examined her manicure while Uncle Robert suddenly found the ceiling fascinating. This is ridiculous, I said finally. Why am I the only one being displaced? Dad's patience visibly snapped. Because you're being selfish. Everyone else is being accommodating except you. If the couch isn't good enough, you can use the shed. There's a cot out there from when we had the house painted last summer. The shed. Our 8x10 garden shed at the back of the property, where we stored lawn equipment and half-empty paint cans. Where mice had built nests every winter since I was a child. You can't be serious, I whispered. Mom touched my arm. It's just for 3 nights, honey. We all need to sacrifice a little for family. I looked at Kyle, sprawled comfortably in Dad's recliner, smirking slightly. He would sleep in his bed tonight. Aunt Patricia was already placing her designer luggage on my freshly changed bed. The garden shed stood at the far corner of our backyard, a weathered wooden structure my father had built before I was born. As I approached with my overnight bag and a borrowed comforter, motion sensor lights illuminated my path across the damp grass. The spring night air carried a distinct chill. Weather forecasts predicted temperatures in the low 40s. A padlock secured the shed door, forcing me to return to the house for the key. When I re-entered through the kitchen, the family was enjoying dessert in the dining room. Laughter erupted at something Kyle said as I rummaged through the junk drawer near the refrigerator. Looking for something? Dad asked, appearing in the doorway with coffee cup in hand. The shed key, I replied without looking up. He reached into his pocket and produced a rusted key. My phone's flashlight revealed cobwebs decorating the corners and a fine layer of dirt covering every surface. The promised cot stood against the far wall, its thin mattress stained with what I hoped was just water damage. I swept away the most obvious spider habitats and laid out my comforter, creating a barrier between myself and the questionable mattress. A bare light bulb hung from the ceiling, controlled by a pull string. When I tugged it, nothing happened. Outside, I settled onto the cot, which responded with an ominous creak and a dip in the middle that promised back pain by morning. Sleep came in restless fragments, interrupted by unfamiliar noises, branches scratching the roof, something scurrying in the corner, and the distant sounds of family members using the bathroom inside the house. Around 2 a.m., I realized with growing urgency that I needed a bathroom myself. I'd assumed I would still have access to the house facilities. Now facing the locked back door, I discovered my key didn't work. They must have engaged the deadbolt from inside. I knocked softly at first, then with increasing urgency. No response. After 10 minutes of knocking, shivering in the cold, I gave up. The side of the shed facing away from the house became my reluctant bathroom. A humiliation that brought tears to my eyes as I remembered indoor plumbing existed just yards away. Back on the cot, I curled into myself for warmth. They were having a wonderful time, completely unbothered by my absence. Morning arrived with painful stiffness in my neck and back. Condensation had formed inside the shed, dampening my comforter and hair. I checked my phone. 6:38 a.m. Perhaps I could sneak inside for a shower before everyone woke up. The back door remained locked. I walked around to the front, conscious of my disheveled appearance, and found that entrance locked as well. With no other option, I knocked. Minutes passed before Dad opened the door, coffee in hand. "You're up early." He yawned, making no move to let me in. "I need to use the bathroom and shower," I explained, aware of how pathetic I sounded. He checked his watch. "Everyone's still sleeping. Can you use the hose to clean up? We don't want to wake the guests with the shower running." "The garden hose." He was suggesting I bathe with the garden hose in 40-degree weather before sunrise on Easter morning. "You can't be serious," I said, voice breaking slightly. His expression hardened. "Don't start with the attitude, Allison. We're all making accommodations this weekend." "All of us except Kyle," I muttered. "That's enough," Dad snapped. "Use the half bath off the kitchen if you must, but be quiet about it. And no shower until everyone's up." I slipped past him into the blessed warmth of the house, catching my reflection in the hallway mirror. Hair matted, face pale, dark circles under my eyes. In the small powder room, I did my best to freshen up using the sink, brushing my teeth and washing my face with trembling hands that never quite warmed under the tap. When I emerged, Mom was in the kitchen starting breakfast preparations. She barely glanced at me. "There you are. Can you start the coffee and get the egg casserole from the refrigerator? We need to get things moving before Grace arrives." "No, good morning." "No, how did you sleep?" "Just straight to tasks." I wordlessly began helping with breakfast, ignoring the curious stares from early rising relatives who wandered into the kitchen. Aunt Patricia appeared in my fuzzy bathrobe, the one she'd found hanging in my bedroom closet. "Allison dear, that bathroom of yours has wonderful water pressure. I slept like a baby in your room, so quiet back there away from the street." I forced a smile while cracking eggs with more force than necessary. By mid-morning, the house buzzed with Easter activity. Grace arrived with her husband and children, prompting tearful greetings from our parents and exclamations about how much the children had grown. I received brief side hugs before being asked to watch the ham while Mom helped Grace settle in. Throughout the day, I moved through Easter preparations in a fog of exhaustion. I hid eggs for the children's hunt, served food I had helped prepare, and cleaned dishes while others relaxed. Not once did anyone ask about my night in the shed or offer to take a turn with the less pleasant tasks. During Easter dinner, we crowded around the extended dining table. Mom had prepared place cards, positioning me between my 7-year-old nephew and elderly great-aunt Mildred, who needed assistance with cutting her food. Kyle sat near the parents, entertaining everyone with exaggerated stories about his latest business venture. "A toast," Dad announced, raising his glass, "to family togetherness and traditions." Some attitude problem about sleeping arrangements. After all we do for her, letting her live here at her age. I quietly stacked dishes, pretending not to hear as they discussed my failure to launch and sensitivity issues. The ham I'd monitored all day sat half-eaten on the counter, my contribution to the meal already forgotten. The second night proved worse than the first. Rain began around 9, a steady drizzle that soon exposed leaks in the shed roof. I positioned my overnight bag to catch the largest drip, but smaller ones persisted, creating a maddening symphony of plinking sounds as water hit the metal shelving units. By midnight, my comforter had developed damp patches, and the temperature had dropped further. I texted Mom. "Roof leaking in shed. Can I please come inside?" The message showed as read but received no reply. I waited 30 minutes before texting Dad with the same request. Again, no response. Around 1 a.m., desperate for warmth, I ventured back to the house to check the extension cord. Perhaps I could at least plug in my phone, which was now below 20% battery. The cord lay in a puddle, unplugged from the house outlet. When I attempted to reconnect it, I discovered the exterior outlet cover had been closed and secured with a small padlock that hadn't been there earlier. Someone had deliberately disconnected the power and ensured I couldn't restore it. I returned to the shed, rain soaking through my sweatshirt, and huddled on the increasingly wet cot. For the first time, I allowed myself to fully acknowledge what I had long suspected. My family didn't merely overlook me. They actively dismissed me. The locked power outlet wasn't negligence. It was intentional exclusion. As I shivered in the dark, Listening to the rain leak through the roof my father had never properly maintained, something shifted inside me. This wasn't love. This wasn't family. This was something else entirely, and I had been accepting it for 26 years. By morning I was feverish and soaking wet, my engineer's mind already formulating a plan that would change everything. Easter Monday dawned bright and clear, a mockery of the storm that had left me shivering and sick in the garden shed. I awoke with a dry, painful cough and the kind of bone-deep chill that signaled my body was fighting infection. My phone battery had died overnight, cutting me off completely from the outside world. I trudged toward the house around 7, determined to take a hot shower regardless of who it disturbed. This time the back door was unlocked. Inside, the kitchen already bustled with activity as Mom prepared a massive brunch for the extended family. "There you are," she said without looking up from the waffle iron. "We need more eggs from the refrigerator in the garage. Uncle Robert likes his extra fluffy." I stood dripping on the tile floor, hair plastered to my forehead, skin pale and clammy, and she hadn't even noticed my condition. "Mom," my voice came out as a rasp, "I'm soaking wet. The shed roof leaked all night." She glanced up briefly. "Well, go change before everyone comes down. And don't track water through the house." "I think I have a fever," I persisted, wrapping my arms around myself to control the shivering. She sighed dramatically. "Allison, we have a house full of guests. I don't have time for this right now." I stood there, swaying slightly, as she continued preparing breakfast as if I'd already left. The simple human concern I'd expected, that anyone would offer a dripping, shivering person, wasn't coming. "Fine," I whispered. "I'm going to shower and change. Be quick about it." She called after me. "Brunch is in an hour." The hot shower restored some warmth to my body, but did nothing for the cold realization spreading through my mind. When I emerged, I took cold medicine from the bathroom cabinet and changed into dry clothes. As I was about to head back downstairs, I noticed something different about my bedroom. The guest luggage was gone, but instead of my belongings being returned, several large boxes now occupied the center of the room. Curious, I opened one to find gym equipment, hand weights and resistance bands. Another contained parts for what appeared to be a treadmill. I was still staring at the boxes when Mom appeared in the doorway. "Oh, you weren't supposed to see those yet," she said, sounding annoyed at my discovery rather than embarrassed by its implications. "What's all this?" I asked, already suspecting the answer. Mom crossed her arms defensively. "Your father and I have been planning to convert this room into a home gym. We're not getting any younger, and the doctor says we need more regular exercise." The casual way she delivered this life-altering information stunned me. "And where exactly am I supposed to live?" "Well," she hesitated, "we thought you might move into the shed permanently. Your father already ordered insulation materials. Or you could find your own place like Grace did years ago." The room spun slightly as I processed her words. "You were going to make me live in the shed? Permanently? Don't be so dramatic. It's a perfectly good space with some improvements. Real adults don't live with their parents anyway," she added, echoing what I'd heard my father say countless times about other people's adult children. Never about Kyle, of course. "Kyle lives here," I pointed out, my voice rising despite the pain in my throat. "He doesn't even pay rent." "That's different. Kyle has special circumstances." "What circumstances?" "His circumstances being your favorite." The words exploded out before I could stop them. Mom's face hardened. "I will not discuss this now. We have guests waiting downstairs." "No," I stood my ground. "We're discussing this now. You gave away my bedroom without telling me. You made me sleep in a leaking shed during a rainstorm. And now you're saying you expected me to live there permanently." Her silence was confirmation enough. "Did you even check on me last night?" "I texted both you and Dad about the leaking roof." She looked away. "We were entertaining guests. I'm sure it wasn't that bad." "Wasn't that bad? Look at me." I gestured to my flushed face and obviously feverish state. "I'm sick from spending the night wet and freezing. And someone locked the power outlet so I couldn't even have light." "That was your father," she admitted casually. "The extension cord in the rain was a hazard. You're an electrical engineer. You should know better." The hypocrisy was staggering. So you were concerned about electrical safety, but not about your daughter potentially getting pneumonia? Our raised voices had attracted attention. Dad appeared in the doorway, with Kyle lurking behind him wearing his perpetual smirk. What's going on here? Dad demanded. Everyone can hear you downstairs. Did you know about this? I pointed to the boxes. Turning my room into a gym while I'm still living here? Dad squared his shoulders. We've been planning it for weeks. You're 26, Allison. Time to stand on your own 2 feet. What about Kyle? He's 23 and contributes nothing. Don't drag your brother into this, Dad warned. Why not? He lives here rent-free while I pay $800 a month. He doesn't cook, clean, or help with anything, but I'm the one sleeping in the shed. Kyle stepped forward. Not my fault you can't get your life together enough to move out. I whirled on him. My life is together. I have a career, I pay my bills, I contribute to this household. What do you do besides mooch off Mom and Dad? That's enough. Dad bellowed. Kyle is finding his path. You should have moved out years ago like Grace did. Grace had her entire education paid for. You didn't contribute a dime to mine. I've been saving for my own place while paying you rent and covering house repairs that you should handle. The commotion had drawn more spectators. Aunt Patricia appeared, looking uncomfortable but unable to resist the drama. Perhaps we should give them privacy, she suggested weakly. No, stay, I said bitterly. You should hear how the Thompson family really operates. Did you know they locked me out of the house last night during the storm? That I had to use the bathroom outside like an animal? Aunt Patricia's eyes widened, but instead of expressing shock at my treatment, she turned to my mother. Martha, I had no idea things were so difficult with Allison. Has she always been this ungrateful? The betrayal hit like a physical blow. Even now, witnessing my mistreatment firsthand, the automatic assumption was that I must be the problem. Uncle Robert joined the growing audience. When I was your age, I had already built my first house. Young people today expect everything handed to them. The fever and exhaustion must have lowered my inhibitions because I laughed out loud. You built your first house with a loan from your father-in-law and free labor from your brothers. Mom told me that story for years. Uncle Robert's face reddened. Well, I still worked hard. So do I. I work 50 hours a week as an engineer, pay rent here, and somehow still get treated like the family burden. My voice broke as tears threatened. From downstairs, I could hear whispers and movement as the younger cousins gathered at the bottom of the stairs, pointing and giggling at the unfolding adult drama. In that moment, surrounded by relatives who either actively participated in my mistreatment or silently enabled it, something inside me shattered. Years of diminishment, dismissal, and outright cruelty crystallized into perfect clarity. This wasn't just a bad weekend or a misunderstanding. This was my life, and it would never change as long as I remained. Memories flashed through my mind. Kindergarten art proudly presented, then found later in the trash. High school science awards met with indifference. College graduation attended begrudgingly, while they threw Kyle a party for passing remedial math. The garden shed wasn't an anomaly. It was simply the most obvious manifestation of my place in this family. The realization must have shown on my face because Mom stepped forward, suddenly concerned about appearances. Allison, you're making a scene. We can discuss this after our guests leave. There's nothing to discuss, I said quietly, a strange calm replacing the feverish anger. I see everything clearly now. I turned and walked past the assembled relatives, down the stairs, and through the curious gaggle of cousins. My mind was already mapping out exactly what needed to happen next. As an engineer, I understood systems, how they worked, how they failed, and most importantly, how to disconnect from them completely. Behind me, I heard my mother call out with forced cheerfulness. Who's ready for Easter brunch? The waffles are getting cold. The family shuffled toward the dining room, the entertainment of my breakdown already giving way to the promise of food. No one followed me as I walked out the front door into the cool spring morning. I didn't look back. The local Holiday Inn Express lobby offered blessed warmth and anonymity. Still wearing my rumpled clothes from the shed, I must have looked as desperate as I felt. But the desk clerk kindly offered me early check-in when I explained I needed a quiet place to make important calls. Room 217, she said. sliding the key card across the counter. "There's tea and coffee in the room, and the hotel doctor is available if you need medical attention." She gestured subtly to my obviously feverish state. "Thank you," I whispered, moved by this basic human consideration from a complete stranger when my own family had offered none. Once in the room, I plugged in my dead phone and took another dose of cold medicine while waiting for it to power up. The generic hotel room with its clean sheets and functioning roof already felt more like home than the place I'd lived for years. As my phone came to life, notifications flooded in: 3 missed calls from work, and an email from my supervisor Marcus asking if I was coming in today. I'd completely forgotten it was Monday, a regular workday. The Easter drama had consumed everything. I called Marcus immediately. "Allison, everything okay? Not like you to miss without notice," his concerned voice answered. "I'm sorry," I croaked, my throat still raw. "I've been sick, and there's a family situation. I should have called. You sound terrible. Take the day, get better. Anything I can help with?" The simple offer of assistance from my boss when my family had provided none brought unexpected tears. "Actually, yes. I need professional advice about a residential electrical situation. Is there somewhere private we can talk tomorrow?" Marcus agreed to an early meeting, sounding intrigued. After hanging up, I created a detailed plan in my engineering notebook. 1. Document shed conditions with photos. 2. Retrieve essential belongings from house. 3. Secure temporary housing. 4. Address illegal electrical connections. 5. Establish financial independence from family accounts. I started with documentation, forcing myself to return to the shed while the family was occupied with brunch. The photos were damning. Exposed wiring where rain had seeped in, dangerous extension cord setups, and the locked exterior outlet that violated several safety codes. As a licensed electrical engineer, I recognized at least 7 code violations that could result in fire or electrocution. Next, I texted my colleague Natalie, one of the few friends I'd maintained despite my family's constant demands on my time. "Emergency. Need help moving some things from my parents' house. Can you come with your car in about an hour?" Natalie responded immediately, "On my way. Need anything else?" "Just moral support," I replied, touched by her readiness to help. While waiting for Natalie, I made a list of essential items to retrieve: professional certifications, financial documents, irreplaceable photos, and enough clothing for 2 weeks. Everything else could be replaced. At noon, the Easter celebration was still in full swing when Natalie's Honda pulled up outside my parents' house. I'd instructed her to park on the street rather than the driveway, hoping to avoid confrontation. We entered through the side door leading directly to the basement where many of my belongings were stored in plastic bins. "What's going on, Allison?" Natalie whispered as we quickly sorted through containers. "You look awful. Family made me sleep in the leaking shed all weekend," I explained between coughs. "Then I discovered they're turning my bedroom into a gym, and expected me to either live in the shed permanently or magically afford Bay Area rent on my own." Natalie's expression transformed from concern to outrage. "They what? Are you serious?" "Completely. I'm done. Getting my stuff and never coming back." We worked efficiently, filling her car with my most important possessions. As we carried the final load through the kitchen, we encountered Kyle raiding the refrigerator. "What are you doing?" he asked through a mouthful of leftover ham. "Moving out," I stated flatly. His eyes widened slightly, but he quickly covered with a smirk. "Yeah, right. You'll be back by dinner." Actually, I set down the box I was carrying and pulled out my house key, placing it on the counter. "I won't." Something in my tone must have convinced him because the smirk faltered. "Mom and Dad are going to freak. That's no longer my problem." I picked up the box and continued toward the door. "Wait," Kyle called, unexpected uncertainty in his voice. "Are you serious? Where will you go?" For the first time, I heard something beyond the antagonism that had defined our relationship for years, perhaps fear about what my departure meant for him. Without me as the family workhorse, would expectations finally fall on his shoulders? "I have a plan," I said simply. "I always do." Outside, Natalie helped load the final box. "Your brother seemed shocked." He's never had to consider consequences before, I replied. This will be educational for everyone. Once back at the hotel, I called Marcus again. Can we move that meeting up to today? It's more urgent than I initially thought. 2 hours later, I sat in Marcus's office at the power company headquarters, spreading photos of the shed electrical setup across his desk. I discovered these code violations at my parents' residence, I explained professionally, despite the fever still clouding my thoughts. As a licensed engineer, I believe they represent imminent safety hazards. Marcus examined the photos with growing concern. Multiple violations, exposed wiring in wet conditions, improper extension cord use, unauthorized modifications to the service panel. He looked up sharply. You said this is your parents' house? Where exactly was this set up? I took a deep breath. In the garden shed where they forced me to sleep during the Easter weekend, despite the rain and near-freezing temperatures. His expression shifted from professional concern to personal outrage. They made you sleep there? With these conditions? Yes. And I've just discovered they intended it as a permanent arrangement. Marcus set the photos down carefully. Allison, I need to be clear about something. Are you reporting this as a private citizen concerned about safety, or as an employee of the power company? Both, I answered honestly. You're right. These are serious safety issues that require immediate attention. I'll assign our senior inspector to conduct a surprise assessment tomorrow morning. He paused. Where are you staying now? Holiday Inn temporarily. I'm looking for an apartment this week. Marcus frowned. With Bay Area prices? That's a tall order on short notice. He seemed to consider something before continuing. My sister Lisa is a property manager. She has a 1-bedroom coming available next week. I can put in a good word if you're interested. That would be amazing, I said, genuinely moved by his help. Consider it done. Now go back to that hotel and rest. You look like you're about to collapse and we need our best engineer healthy. On the Uber ride back to the hotel, my phone exploded with notifications. Mom had finally noticed my absence and the missing key. Her texts escalated from annoyed. Where are you? Brunch is still happening. To demanding, come home right now, young lady. To manipulative, your father and I are worried sick. I turned off notifications and drafted a single clear text. I have moved out permanently. The shed where you forced me to sleep contains multiple electrical code violations that present serious safety hazards. As a licensed electrical engineer, I've reported these violations to the proper authorities. Inspectors will visit tomorrow. I'm safe but will not be returning. Any further communication should be in writing only. I hesitated before sending it, wondering if I was overreacting. Then I remembered shivering in the dark as rain leaked onto my fever-heated skin, while my family celebrated just yards away in warmth and comfort. I remembered discovering they planned to make this arrangement permanent. I remembered 26 years of being the family afterthought. I pressed send. The response was immediate. A flood of texts and calls that I ignored completely. I blocked their numbers one by one, keeping only email open as a channel for necessary communication. Then I took more cold medicine and fell into the first peaceful sleep I'd had in days. The next morning, I awoke to an email from my father. Not an apology but a threat. Your mother is distraught over your childish behavior. This inspection nonsense is going too far. If you don't call off whatever you've done and come home immediately, you'll no longer be welcome in this family. Think very carefully about your next move, Allison. I forwarded the email to my newly created documentation folder without responding. Then I checked in with Marcus, who confirmed the inspector was already en route to my parents' address. By afternoon, the inspector's preliminary report had been filed. The violations were even more extensive than I'd initially documented. Not just in the shed but throughout the house. Unpermitted electrical work, dangerous overloading of circuits, improper grounding, and most seriously, an illegal connection to the shed that created imminent fire risk. The power company had no choice but to temporarily disconnect service until the violations were addressed. Standard procedure for safety hazards of this magnitude. Estimates for repairs and permits would likely run into thousands of dollars. As I read the report in my hotel room, My phone lit up with an unfamiliar number. Against better judgment, I answered. How could you? My mother's voice trembled with rage. They've shut off our power. During a family gathering. The inspector found dangerous code violations, I replied calmly. This is standard procedure. Your father says it will cost over $5,000 to fix everything. Where are we supposed to get that money? Perhaps from the $800 in monthly rent I've been paying you, I suggested. Or maybe Kyle could contribute for once. This is vindictive and you know it, she hissed. All because you couldn't handle sleeping in the shed for a few nights. The casual cruelty in her dismissal confirmed everything. Mom, normal families don't make their children sleep in garden sheds. They don't lock them out during storms or unplug their power. Normal adult children don't live with their parents. Grace. Stop. I interrupted. I'm not discussing Grace or Kyle. I'm done competing for basic decency. The inspector found violations that could have burned down your house or electrocuted someone. That's not vindictive, that's reality. Well, I hope you're happy now that you've ruined Easter, she snapped before hanging up. I stared at the phone, struck by the absurdity of her concern. Not safety. Not my well-being. Easter celebrations. As if holiday appearances mattered more than her daughter's health or the family's physical safety. That evening, as I packed for my first day back at work, Natalie texted me. Lisa, Marcus's sister, called. She has an apartment available now. Previous tenant left early. 1 bedroom, utilities included. 10 minutes from your office. Want to see it tomorrow? For the first time in days, I smiled. Absolutely. The universe, it seemed, was confirming my decision in every possible way. 1 week after Easter, I stood in my new apartment surrounded by moving boxes and IKEA furniture still in various stages of assembly. The 1-bedroom unit wasn't large, just under 600 square feet, but it was mine entirely. No one could banish me to a shed or convert my bedroom to a gym on a whim. The rent was reasonable thanks to Lisa's employee discount program, and the 10-minute commute to work saved me hundreds in monthly gas expenses. Natalie sprawled on my newly delivered couch, handing me decorative pillows to arrange. I still can't believe your family did that to you. Has anyone reached out with an actual apology? I shook my head while positioning a blue pillow against the armrest. Dad sent an email demanding I pay for the electrical repairs since it was my vindictive reporting that caused the problem. Mom's tried calling from different numbers, but it's just more guilt-tripping. Kyle texted once asking where I put the spare key to the garage. Natalie rolled her eyes. Unbelievable. Have you told Grace what happened? She left a voicemail saying I overreacted as usual and should apologize to Mom and Dad for ruining Easter. I smoothed a throw blanket across the back of the couch. Apparently making your daughter sleep in a leaking shed is fine, but reporting safety violations that could burn down the house is unforgivable. Some family, Natalie muttered. The distance of a week had brought surprising clarity. Without the constant tension of navigating my family's expectations and disappointments, I discovered reserves of energy I hadn't known I possessed. I'd begun sleeping through the night without anxiety-induced insomnia. The persistent knot in my stomach had dissolved. Even my lingering cold had finally cleared. My first therapy session had been eye-opening. Dr. Winters, a calm woman with gray-streaked hair, had listened to my Easter story without visible shock. What you're describing sounds like a pattern of family scapegoating, she'd explained. One child becomes the designated problem, regardless of their actual behavior, while others are elevated to golden child status. It's a form of family dysfunction that can cause significant trauma to the scapegoated individual. But they're not abusive. I'd protested weakly. They never hit me or anything. Dr. Winters had given me a gentle look. Making a sick person sleep in dangerous conditions without bathroom access is abusive, Allison. Emotional neglect is abuse. Just because it doesn't leave visible bruises doesn't mean it's not harmful. Those words had echoed in my mind for days afterward. The validation that my experience wasn't normal, that I wasn't overreacting or too sensitive, felt like oxygen after years of suffocation. At work, my focus and productivity had actually increased despite the personal upheaval. Marcus had been supportive, checking in regularly but respecting my privacy. The inspection report had been processed according to standard procedures without special treatment, maintaining my professional integrity. Speaking of work, Natalie said, interrupting my thoughts. Did Marcus mention the promotion? I set down the throw pillow I'd been fidgeting with. What promotion? Natalie's eyes widened. Oops. Maybe I wasn't supposed to say anything yet. But there's a senior engineer position opening in the safety compliance division. Marcus has been telling everyone you'd be perfect for it. A position in safety compliance would mean a significant salary increase and more authority in precisely the area where I'd shown expertise. The irony wasn't lost on me. My family's disregard for my safety might lead directly to career advancement in safety enforcement. As we finished arranging the living room, my phone buzzed with an email notification. The sender was my father with the subject line, "Urgent, power still not restored." Despite my better judgment, I opened it. Allison, it's been a week with no electricity. Your mother is beside herself. The contractors say repairs will take another week minimum and cost over $7,000 with permits. Kyle has moved in with a friend temporarily. This vindictive stunt has gone far enough. Call off the inspectors and come fix what you've done, or don't consider yourself part of this family anymore. Dad, no acknowledgement of wrongdoing. No concern for my well-being. Just demands and threats. I showed Natalie the email, and she snorted in disbelief. The audacity. They make you sleep in a death trap, then blame you for reporting it? And notice how suddenly Kyle can find alternative housing when it affects him directly. They genuinely believe I reported the violations out of spite, not legitimate safety concerns, I said, the realization both sad and freeing. They can't imagine I was acting professionally because they've never seen me as a professional, or even as an adult with valid boundaries. What will you do? Natalie asked. I composed a brief reply. Dad, the inspection was standard procedure for the violations documented. The power company follows specific protocols for safety hazards that I have no authority to override, nor would I compromise public safety by attempting to do so. I recommend hiring a licensed electrician and complying fully with the inspector's requirements for restoration of service. Allison. After sending it, I blocked his email address too. That evening after Natalie left, I sat on my new couch sipping tea, surveying my small but comfortable space. My phone rang. A work number I didn't immediately recognize. Allison Thompson speaking. I answered professionally. Allison, it's Marcus. Sorry to call after hours, but I wanted to let you know about a situation. His tone was carefully neutral, which immediately put me on alert. What's happened? I asked. Your father came to the office today demanding to speak with you. When reception explained you were in meetings, he insisted on seeing me instead. He made quite a scene, claiming you abused your position to target their home with unnecessary inspections. My stomach dropped. Marcus, I'm so sorry. Don't apologize, he interrupted firmly. I reviewed the inspection report myself. The violations were legitimate and severe. I explained that to your father, and informed him that any attempt to intimidate our employees would result in security involvement. I closed my eyes, mortified but grateful. Thank you. I never meant for my family situation to affect work. It hasn't affected anything except my opinion of your professionalism, Marcus assured me. Most engineers in your position would have overlooked those violations due to personal connections. You put safety first despite significant personal cost. That's exactly the kind of integrity we need in the safety compliance division. So Natalie's slip hadn't been premature after all. Are you offering me a position? Officially. The opening won't be posted until next week. Unofficially, I'm encouraging you to apply. Your handling of this situation demonstrated exactly the qualities we need. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet apartment processing the conversation. My father's attempt to undermine me professionally had backfired completely, potentially launching me into the next phase of my career. The pattern continued over the subsequent weeks. Every effort my family made to punish me for leaving only confirmed the toxicity I'd escaped. My mother sent a certified letter demanding repayment for housing and food provided after you turned 18, totaling over $40,000. My attorney friend drafted a response pointing out that my documented rent payments exceeded market rate for a shared bedroom. nullifying any such claim. Kyle, upon returning to the powerless house, texted angrily that I'd destroyed the family and demanded I fix the electrical issues myself for free. I responded with contact information for 3 licensed electricians before blocking his number. Grace left a tearful voicemail claiming her children were traumatized by the family conflict I'd caused, concluding with, "I always knew you were selfish, but this is beyond anything I imagined." I deleted it without responding. Aunt Patricia, perhaps feeling guilty about her role in the Easter incident, sent an awkward email suggesting both sides should apologize and move forward. I archived it without comment. Each interaction reinforced that I hadn't overreacted by leaving. If anything, I'd waited far too long. 4 weeks after Easter, I received an unexpected text from an unknown number. "Hi Allison, it's your cousin Megan. Got your number from Natalie. Can we meet for coffee? There's something I need to talk to you about." Megan was Aunt Patricia's 19-year-old daughter, who had been present during the Easter disaster. Curious and cautious, I agreed to meet at a cafe near my office. Megan arrived looking nervous, fiddling with her coffee cup for several minutes before speaking. "I wanted to tell you I'm sorry about Easter. The way everyone treated you was horrible. And none of us said anything." The simple acknowledgement nearly brought tears to my eyes. "Thank you for saying that. After you left, things got weird," she continued. "With the power out, everyone had to find hotels or go home early. Uncle Frank and Aunt Martha kept saying you were being dramatic and vindictive, but Dad saw the shed and said it was a lawsuit waiting to happen." I raised an eyebrow. "Uncle Robert said that." Megan nodded. "And then last weekend when I went to visit Grandma, she made me sleep on a broken air mattress in the basement while Kyle got the guest room. When I complained, Aunt Martha said, 'Younger people need to toughen up,' and reminded me that family requires sacrifice." Understanding dawned. "They're treating you like they treated me." "Exactly," Megan exclaimed. "It's like they needed a new person to dump on after you left." And I realized, this is how they treated you all the time, isn't it? As Megan described her recent experiences, I recognized the familiar pattern. Without me as the designated family scapegoat, they'd begun transferring the role to my younger cousin. "How do you do it?" she asked finally. "Just walk away from family like that?" I considered her question carefully. "I didn't walk away from family, Megan. I walked away from mistreatment. Real family doesn't make you sleep in dangerous conditions or dismiss your legitimate concerns. Real family respects your boundaries and treats you with basic dignity." "I'm thinking about transferring universities," she confided. "There's a program in Colorado I've always been interested in, but Mom said I needed to stay close to family." "The same family that puts you in a basement on a broken air mattress?" I asked gently. She gave a small smile. "Yeah, that family." Before we parted, I gave Megan my new address and an open invitation to visit. "Sometimes the family we choose is more supportive than the family we're born into," I told her. As I walked back to my office, I realized I was becoming for Megan what I had needed all those years. Someone who validated her experiences and supported her autonomy. Perhaps that was the purpose behind the pain I'd endured. Not just to free myself but to help break the cycle for others. That evening, I received notification of my official promotion to Senior Safety Compliance Engineer, with a 30% salary increase. As I celebrated quietly in my apartment, my safe, peaceful apartment that no one could take from me, I reflected on the strange journey from garden shed to independence. The power in my family's home had finally been restored after 6 weeks, multiple inspections and considerable expense. But something far more important had been restored to me. My sense of self-worth, my professional confidence, and my right to basic human dignity. Sometimes I realized you have to disconnect from what's hurting you before you can truly power up your own life. 6 months after the Easter shed incident, I stood in my apartment surveying the transformation, both of my living space and myself. The once sparse rooms now reflected my personality with carefully chosen furniture, framed engineering prints, and plants thriving on every windowsill. Similarly, I had blossomed in the absence of constant criticism and dismissal. My promotion to Senior Safety Compliance Engineer had come with unexpected benefits beyond the generous salary increase. I now led a team responsible for residential safety inspections throughout the county, implementing new protocols based partly on what I'd learned from my family's dangerous electrical setup. We'd already prevented 3 potential house fires through early intervention, each one reinforcing that my professional stand had been necessary and right. The morning routine I'd established nourished me in ways I'd never experienced while living under my parents' roof. Quiet mornings with coffee on my small balcony, yoga twice weekly with Natalie, weekend hikes exploring trails throughout the Bay Area. Simple pleasures that had seemed impossibly indulgent in my former life. Therapy with Dr. Winters continued, helping me untangle the complex web of family dynamics that had kept me accepting mistreatment for 26 years. You're experiencing what we call post-traumatic growth, she explained during a recent session. After escaping a toxic environment, many people don't just recover, they actually flourish beyond their previous baseline. That flourishing extended to my social life as well. Without family obligations consuming my evenings and weekends, I'd reconnected with college friends, joined an engineering mentorship program for high school girls, and even started dating someone I'd met at a professional conference. These relationships, built on mutual respect and genuine interest, showed me how healthy connections were supposed to feel. The contrast with my family relationships couldn't have been starker. In the months since I'd left, their attempts at contact had followed a predictable pattern: initial rage, manipulation through guilt, reluctant acknowledgement of the electrical violations, but never of their treatment of me. And finally, awkward overtures toward reconciliation without actual apology. My father's most recent email arrived with the subject line "Time to move past this." The body contained just 3 sentences. "Your mother and I think this estrangement has gone on long enough. The electrical issues have been resolved at considerable expense. We expect you for Sunday dinner this weekend to discuss your return to the family. No recognition of wrongdoing. No acknowledgement of my new life. Just an expectation that I would resume my role in their dysfunctional system now that enough time had passed." I crafted a measured response. "Dad, I'm glad to hear the electrical issues have been resolved and your home is now safe. However, I won't be attending Sunday dinner. The problems that led to my departure weren't just about unsafe wiring, they were about years of being treated as less valuable than Grace or Kyle, culminating in being forced to sleep in dangerous conditions while everyone else enjoyed comfort. I've established an independent life that I find fulfilling and healthy. If you and Mom are genuinely interested in having a relationship with me going forward, it would need to begin with acknowledgement of past mistreatment and clear boundaries for future interactions. I'm open to family counseling if that would help facilitate such a conversation." Allison. I didn't expect a response and none came. The silence was its own answer. They wanted compliance, not relationship. The realization brought sadness but no longer devastation. I had built a life where my worth didn't depend on their validation. My phone chimed with a text from Megan. "Accepted to Colorado State. Engineering program starts January. Can I crash with you during winter break while I apartment hunt?" I smiled as I replied with an enthusiastic yes. Megan had indeed applied for transfer, despite significant family pressure to remain local. We'd stayed in regular contact, our shared experiences creating a bond that felt more like genuine family than most of my blood relationships ever had. Following our initial coffee meeting, she'd visited my apartment several times, usually after difficult family encounters. I'd listened without judgment as she processed her own experiences of being diminished and dismissed. I'd offered perspective without pushing her toward any particular decision. And most importantly, I'd modeled that it was possible to set boundaries and thrive, even when family labeled you selfish for doing so. 3 days later, my intercom buzzed unexpectedly. When I answered, the building manager announced, "There's a Kyle Thompson here to see you. Should I send him up?" My brother had never visited my apartment. I hesitated, then curiosity won out. "Yes, that's fine." Kyle looked distinctly uncomfortable standing in my doorway, hands shoved in pockets, unable to meet my eyes. I invited him in with cautious politeness, offering water which he declined. "Nice place," he muttered, scanning my living room. "Smaller than I expected." "It suits me," I replied evenly. "What brings you here, Kyle?" He shifted his weight, clearly struggling with whatever had prompted this unprecedented visit. "I got fired yesterday," he finally blurted. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, genuinely surprised by both the news and his choice to share it with me. "It's the third job since Easter," he continued. "I can't seem to. I don't know how to." He trailed off, frustration evident. I waited, sensing there was more. "Mom and Dad are different now," he said abruptly. "Since you left. They're always on my case. Why can't I hold a job? When am I moving out? Why don't I contribute more? It's like suddenly they expect me to be an actual adult or something." The irony was so perfect I had to suppress a smile. "That sounds difficult," I offered neutrally. "How did you do it for so long?" he asked, finally meeting my eyes. "How did you handle being the one they were always disappointed in?" The question caught me off guard with its raw honesty. For perhaps the first time in our lives, Kyle was seeing me as someone with experience he could learn from rather than compete with. "It wasn't easy," I admitted. "But I built a life outside the house, education, career. Friends who valued me. That gave me perspective their criticism couldn't touch." Kyle nodded slowly. "I never had to do that. Everything was just handed to me. And now I don't know how to function without it." He looked around my apartment again, seeing it with new eyes. "You really built all this yourself, didn't you?" "Every bit of it," I confirmed. "I think I've been a pretty terrible brother," he said suddenly. I could have agreed emphatically. Instead I said, "We were both placed in roles that made a healthy relationship nearly impossible. You as the golden child who could do no wrong, me as the scapegoat who could do no right." "I didn't see it then," he acknowledged. "But I'm starting to." Before leaving, Kyle asked if we could meet occasionally, not to reconcile on our parents' terms, but to establish a new relationship as adults outside their influence. I agreed, with clear boundaries about acceptable behavior. "They won't change, will they?" he asked at the door. "Probably not," I said gently. "But we can." That unexpected conversation reinforced what Dr. Winters had been telling me for months. My departure had disrupted the family system in ways that extended beyond my own liberation. Without me as the designated problem person, the dynamics were shifting, forcing others to confront realities they'd previously been insulated from. As autumn leaves fell outside my windows, I reflected on everything that had changed since that rainy night in the garden shed. The immediate crisis had lasted less than 72 hours, but it had catalyzed a transformation years in the making. Like electricity finding the path of least resistance, I had finally allowed myself to flow toward health rather than continuing to short-circuit in an impossible situation. There were still difficult days. Holidays brought complicated emotions. Certain songs or scents could trigger memories of family moments that hadn't been all bad, creating brief pangs of grief for what might have been. But these moments no longer derailed me. They were weather passing through my emotional landscape, not the climate itself. One evening, as I prepared materials for an upcoming safety presentation at a community center, my phone lit up with an unexpected name, Grace. My sister rarely contacted me directly, preferring to filter communication through our parents. Curious, I answered. "Allison, do you have a minute?" Her voice sounded tight, controlled. "I do. Is everything okay?" A pause then. "Not really. Mom and Dad are selling the house." The news was genuinely surprising. "After making all those electrical repairs?" "That's just it," Grace explained. "They're claiming they can't afford to maintain the property anymore after the financial setback of the repairs. They want to move into a condo, and they've asked if Kyle can live with us temporarily." I suppressed a laugh at the predictable outcome. "What did you say?" "I said I'd think about it. But honestly, Tom is furious at the suggestion. He says Kyle needs to stand on his own feet." She paused again. "Which is exactly what you were saying all along about the different standards they held us to." It was the closest Grace had ever come to acknowledging the family's unequal treatment. "That must be a difficult position for you," I offered. "It is," she admitted. "And it's made me think about whether I was fair to you. During Easter and before." Not quite an apology, but a step toward recognition. "I appreciate you saying that, Grace. I still think you could have handled the electrical situation differently, she added quickly, reverting to familiar criticism. But maybe you weren't entirely wrong about everything else. Coming from Grace, this qualified acknowledgement was significant progress. We ended the call cordially, with no promises of immediate reconciliation but perhaps a tiny opening for future healing. As I finished preparing my presentation materials, I smiled at the theme I'd chosen, recognizing hidden hazards in familiar places. The electrical safety content was genuine, but the metaphor wasn't lost on me. Sometimes the most dangerous situations are the ones we've normalized through long exposure, whether faulty wiring or toxic family dynamics. My journey from garden shed to independence had taught me that safety wasn't just about proper electrical connections. It was about recognizing my own worth, establishing healthy boundaries, and building a life where I could thrive rather than merely survive. For anyone watching this who recognizes their own family dynamics in my story, please know that standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and ultimately for others, is to disconnect from what's hurting you so you can power up your own life. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to make a difficult break from family expectations? How did you find the courage to choose yourself? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if this story resonated with you. Your support helps others find these stories of resilience and growth. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember, the most powerful electrical current is the one that lights up your authentic self.